What's going on, YouTube? And I'm back. All right. National events is this weekend for North America. I and Wrestling Plus guys will be going down there and participating in the events. So if you do see any of us, say what's up, keep that shit cute, and most importantly, let's begin with this video. So today we're going to discuss the top 5 best decks of this current format and what to expect for the national event this weekend, because I want to make sure all of y'all are straight. I've been doing my due diligence of studying and also testing these past couple of weeks. I will personally be playing a deck that is not in this list because I like to play what I like to play. However, if you guys also like to play what you like to play, or you're one of the people who like to play the better decks or the more popular decks of the format, then this video would be very valuable for you to digest entirely, because I will be showing you the list up front so you guys can see, and I will be breaking down why I say what I say in this video. So make sure to subscribe and like the video if you actually do enjoy the content. Although I would appreciate if you promoted my content by liking it, because the algorithm would be recommending the video to other people that like this type of content. But I would more value if you did it, if you actually enjoyed it. So let's begin. Kazuhira has been the best deck for a very long time. In fact, ever since Konami hit tier severely hard, right? The Shuzu tier variant, Cash has been running things. They bullied a lot of decks out the way. In fact, if you wanted to win an event, in my honest opinion, these past couple of months, you should be playing Cash. Now, ironically, after this recent ban list, things have changed. Cash is no longer the outright best deck of the format. Now, it's just Cash and Sprite. It's a 2-deck format, that dynamic duo, Cash and Sprite. And then there's everything else. And I'll explain, because you're going to say, Cody, what the hell are you talking about? How is this a 2-deck format? Well, very simple. Although Rika Plants won Nationals, this previous weekend, which is insane to me because this is the second year in a row that deck has won the European Nationals, it's still not a top 5 deck, and it's still nowhere close to be the best deck. In fact, it's still Cash. If that player and these other European players would bother to read cards, maybe these bad decks would stop winning these events over there. Now, Cash is still the deck to beat. Summon a Rising Heart Pass is still very devastating. It's still super annoying with a shifter behind it or a Drone Lockbird. Like, it's just nuts. Like, still strong, right? And the deck can go Zeus also, and many other ways of going second. Like Fenrir, if not, is the best main deck monster, is one of the best main deck monsters of this current format, and then that just goes to show why the deck is so fucking powerful. Now, Sprite, however, despite getting hit in the last ban list, has found its way into the list of being one of the best decks in the format because of one simple reason. Listening? It's because of Gigantic Sprite. And Sprite's bringing. Now, Sprite is being used as an engine to complement other engines that make this deck really, really disgusting. You can mix Sprite with Melfi and have a super interruptive board that has some negates that do not allow your opponent to have a good chance of playing without a side deck card or a blowout card in the main or going second, which you have to draw into, which is really a lot to ask for. Or you can play the Sprite Runic variant, which is just insanely crazy. Like a super negate board that has cards in hand that could be hand traps or quick play spells that interact with your opponent and then end on you drawing 3 cards, which could be more quick play spells that interact with your opponent or hand traps, right? And then the ability to just rebake that entire board if they have a second turn is just crazy, right? And you would think the fact that you don't have a battle phase would make this deck bad, but no, in reality, it doesn't. Because who needs a battle phase when your opponent can't play, right? So that's why Sprite has found its way into being a top strategy tier 1 deck. I would say Kazuhira is tier 1A and Sprite is tier 1B, right? But they're both still tier 1 and it's still a 2-deck format. And if you had to ask me which of these decks is the best out of the 2, you really can't say. I think it just comes down to matchup of the individual players who are playing the decks. I think they both have a good % chance of winning the duel. Some would say that the Sprite Runic variant has an edge because Runic cards has an easier time playing through cash. I would argue differently. I would argue that the catch tier player, although might have a more harder time in that particular form matchup, has a better time against the entire format itself. So that's why it's just like, what's really considered the best deck? The deck that beats everything else, or the one that could beat the best deck, right? That's how I look at it, right? Now don't get it wrong, Sprite, Live 10, Runic, whatever variant of Sprite you want to go with, has a pretty good time with all the decks in the format. But Cadgeteer just has a generally better time and doesn't run the risk of losing into time or playing the time or worrying about time because their battle phases aren't being skipped and is a lot easier to pilot, therefore less rooms of error to be made when playing a deck. So 9 times out of 10, you probably will see the better player piloting the Sprite deck, but a win's a win. And a lot of these national champions are Cadgeteer players. So let's move on to the great contenders, which is, in my opinion, tier 2, A, B, and C. Tier A, I would put Brandon Despia. Although Brand Expulsion was banned in the last ban list, people are still able to give Puppet Lock you, and it's annoying. And the only way to stop it is by opening up Ash Blossom to stop the Branded Fusion. If you cannot Ash the Branded Fusion, then you're going to get Gimme Puppet Block if they're running it. And if they're running it, that's just an auto lose. And in my opinion, if you're playing a deck that has an auto win button in the main and you can pull it off consistently, that's a pretty good deck. Pretty good deck. And then from my personal experience, decks like this, Scythe Dot decks, they tend to have a good time in events like these and tend to do a lot of upsets. It just comes down to the die rolls and the matchups, right? Because if you're playing Despia into decks like Labyrinth, it doesn't hurt as much, right? Because it's a set 5 pass deck. And being Gimme Puppet Lock doesn't make a big difference against a set 5 pass deck, right? But if you're playing, Gimme Puppet Lock into decks that are running cards like, let's just say, Bestials or DD Crow, right? Well, then they're not as good because you have main deck answers for them or side deck answers for them. So this deck is only as good as those who are not prepared for it. And I believe a lot of people will not be prepared for it and therefore will get blown out. My next contender will be Labyrinth, a set 5 pass deck that did not get touched in the last ban list. In fact, has not been touched since it's released. And I think that deck is pretty crazy. The only thing that's holding it back is the fact that it is a set 5 pass deck. That's the only thing that's making it bad. If there was a way to mix Labyrinth with a combo archetype that can end on a, decent board, just something decent, I think this deck will easily be a tier 1 deck, tier 1 A, B, or C. Your choice, of course, right? But because we don't have those options and it's just plain old Labyrinth that are being played, well, the deck is kind of trash. Although, good trash. Not trash, but good trash, right? So, in all honesty, it's a good consideration for a 4th best deck of the format, and also probably want to be one of the more popular decks you'll be seeing this weekend. So, with that being said, if you do not have a main or side deck answer to Skill Drain, Solemn Package, Eradicator, D-Barrier, Rivalry goes in, and any other floodgate you can think of, then you probably should start thinking right now, because if you don't have an answer, you're going to auto lose. Unfortunately, in Yu-Gi-Oh, when playing against stun decks, they force you to just have the answer or lose. That's pretty much how it goes. The 5th deck is not Draco Pals. It's not Draco Slayers. It is Dragon Links. Unfortunately, this generator did not give me a picture that perfectly represented the Dragon Link deck, and I just grabbed the dragon. So, sue me. I think Dragon Links is a strong contender as a 5th best deck of the format. It has a pretty good matchup against a lot of these decks. Despia being one of them, Labyrinth being the other, and also Sprite, because they all have dark and light monsters that can feed the Bestial package, which gives you free advantages. The deck has a fairly decent time going first or second, playing in and through hand traps, as well as blowout cards like Dark Ruler No More, right? In my honest opinion, I think a deck to play and also prepare for is Dragon Links, because if you're playing a gimmicky strategy that has a hard time playing through Bestials, well, I have to tell you something. Play a different deck. Just play a different deck. Okay. Now, there are some other decks that are worth mentioning, but I personally don't think are as good or worth mentioning, right? Is Vanquish Souls, right? Sword Souls, even Dinosaurs, even Tier Elements, right? Hell, even Flu. Like, there's so many other decks you can mention, right? But I don't think they're as good as the decks I listed. In fact, I think that they need more support or other decks need to get hit. It's just that simple, right? Um, if a Vanquish Soul player does manage to top at this event, it's probably because people have yet to read the cards or have a good idea of how the deck works. Vanquish Soul is definitely an honorable worth mentioning because the deck itself, from my first impressions, I thought that it was pretty good. But after further testing and reviewing it, I learned to realize the deck heavily relies on having cards in hand, specific attributes in hand, and also specific cards in hand, which allows them to tag out and play and operate in a certain manner that's very telegraphed, right? It's just so linear that if you're someone who's competent and knows the deck does, you shouldn't be losing to it if you are playing a deck that can play around or through the strategies, right? If you're playing a deck that has a hard time addressing the problems that's being thrown at you, then the deck is pretty strong. But unfortunately, decks like Cash, decks like Sprite, just don't care. They don't care about Vanquish Souls. They're just gonna overpower them, honestly, not resource them and just right. The problem with Vanquish Souls is it requires too much interactions to be happening, right? If you're allowing your opponent to interact with you and your deck isn't inherently broken, then why am I playing this deck? Why am I even worried about this deck? That's the problem. Cachatira summons an Horizon Heart. It's a floodgate that interrupts and banishes your cards on your board on your opponent's turn. That's annoying. Sprite, a deck that ends on the super negate board, but also interacts on your opponent's turn with cards in hand that allows you to draw. That's annoying. Brand Despia, a deck that summons a monster that says you go to summon give it puppet to rest of the turn. That's annoying. Labyrinth, a deck that flips Skill Drain or Eradicator and can search both cards through their own means is annoying. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, Vega Soul is honorable mention, but is not one of the best decks in the format. With that being said, I am Cody. This is your top decks format video for Nationals. Until next time, guys. Peace.